contribute to 3 trillion of economic growth. We also know that the multiplier effect of an investment in the blue economy is 5. So for every dollar that is invested in the blue economy, $5 are created in economic value added. But we also know that the blue economy is extremely broad, diverse, from energy, aquaculture, biotechnology, maritime surveillance, and all the ancillary services, including tourism as well. And for SIDS, this is a very important point because SIDS cover 30% of ocean territory. So we have all these challenges embodied in one discussion. So, but we also have innovative examples of what SIDS are doing, right? So Seychelles had issued the first blue bond. Palau have a maritime sanctuary and a shark sanctuary whereby 80% of their EEZ is earmarked for fisheries, not for fisheries, but for fish tourism. And Belize have also a maritime debt conversion for maritime conservation. So I would like to start off with the potential of the blue economy for small states, right? And I think that over here we need a good discussion, and I think Colin is well set to sort of link this potential from an economic perspective and linking the blue economy to economic growth.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we've heard 2 impassioned pleas from the prime ministers that began this, and both of them allude to the particular challenges that SIDS have. I mean, SIDS face a challenge on their inputs, on scale, and on exports. Imports are expensive, inputs are expensive because most of them are imported. Scale is difficult to have because their economies are small and it's difficult to regionalize. Exports are difficult because you have to travel a long distance. I mean, what is unique about the blue-green economy, and I love that concept, by the way, it's not just the blue economy, but the blue-green economy, is it gives an opportunity to SIDS to address each one of those and turn weakness into strength. So on the inputs, rather than importing energy now, we've got, access to solar, access to other forms of renewable energy that reduce that cost. The sense of scale is a great one because rather than being limited by the land, which has traditionally limited their scale, now you've got the entire ocean, and so suddenly scale has been turned on its head. And even the export problem, the blue-green economy with the notion of perhaps climate finance, climate credits, climate adaptation, these are all benefits that actually don't even have to leave the country. So, I mean, as far as a scene setter, we're in a time where there is reason for guarded optimism. I mean, the blue-green economy, I think, genuinely gives an opportunity for SIDS to kind of readjust how they address their private sector development.
Yes, and in fact, I'd like to jump on the last point that you mentioned, the importance of the private sector. And we know that over there, SIDS also face, as you said, a number of challenges. But we're seeing a lot of startups coming into the scene whereby they're innovating, and even in the sense of accessing resources through elements like tokenization, crowdfunding, and also adapting business models to fit in the realities of SIDS. And I'd like to include over here Mansour, who before the session we were talking about his business on how he's adapting it to see how it can fit SIDS. Maybe you want to share your experience and your thoughts around this.
No, absolutely. Just to give you a little bit of background, our main business is in Africa. We provide solar home systems and mini-grids and clean cooking solutions. And These are solutions where we install solar panel and batteries at the household of people, and people use mobile money, digital payments. When they pay, the system turns on. When they don't pay, it turns off. And the really exciting things about islands are that we're able to actually maybe reach that level of scale very rapidly in places across the Pacific nations. In places like Rwanda, we've already managed to reach 10% of households with clean electricity. And one of the challenges is scale. How do we actually make sure that the size of market is large enough to be able to justify investments that we've been able to do in Africa in places like small island nations? That is a key question to solve to make it economically viable. The second big thing here as well is that some of these island nations are effectively a set of mini-grids. So there are small grids that are operating, largely run by a centralized diesel generator, so they are consuming quite a lot of diesel. So to be able to actually transition that source of diesel to something more renewable, something more efficient, is totally possible to do as well. The third big element here as well is around productive uses of electricity. So one of the things is that is often overlooked when thinking about the energy transition is not just about providing the clean electron or a clean molecule for energy consumption, but it's also making sure that that consumption happens in a productive way. So a lot of this actually requires appliance financing, machinery financing, so that actually the right machinery, the right appliances can actually be financed for people to actually build economic activity around that. And in all those categories, I think small island nations have an enormous potential to actually be among the first countries in the world to actually transition fully. And while transitioning fully, develop a new economy. That new economy actually helps them to become more sustainable over the long term as well. But the two challenges to solve here to accelerate this is the size of market challenge. How do private investors make those investments in countries where the size of market is small? We're talking tens of thousands of households, or maybe even up to 100,000 households. And the second big challenge here as well is that how do we actually make a project that has the overall return that is meaningful as well? So it's not just about the profitability of that market, but the overall return to be actually meaningful versus the other opportunity that exists. And there needs to be mechanisms to align that front, but the opportunity is huge.
Yes, I think you also managed again to touch on the main challenges that small islands face, right? It's market size, scalability, and all of that. But one route, and you also mentioned it, is the role of digital transformation in ensuring small islands can either leapfrog development or today, with the confluence of all different technologies, actually be utilized either for a POC or a beta sort of concept to see if that can work, and then companies scale up in other larger markets. I'll turn to John, who can share maybe the power of digital transformation in supporting islands to sort of reduce the barriers surrounding their challenges, their inherent challenges, especially considering when we're talking about maritime resources, the scale that the maritime area has in relation to land area, and the limited resources they have to actually surveil such territories, which can limit and then the actual potential of the blue economy to kick off.
Thank you for that. So one of the ways to think about the financial blue economy is to think about how you underpin the development of that blue economy. I work for a company in Canada called MDA, and thanks to investment from the Canadian government, we've developed sophisticated maritime surveillance capabilities. Seeing is believing. If you can see what is happening on the ocean and you understand what is happening in your surroundings, then that can help you harness the capabilities of the ocean. But that is a huge challenge for small island states. In some cases, the exclusive economic zone for the ocean may extend up to 250 miles. How does a small island state understand what's happening on the ocean so that they can manage fisheries, so that they can manage pollution, so that they can take advantage of other resources in the ocean. It's a challenge. There's many vessels on the ocean today. At any one point in time, there might be 100,000 plus vessels on the ocean. How do I know those vessels are behaving? In some cases, technology can help the island state monitor that domain and take control of that domain, whether it's the Department of Fisheries or the Coast Guard or for academic research. And by understanding what is happening in the domain, then you can better informed with insight to manage the financial development.
Yes, thanks, John. And I think one crucial element, right, of the blue economy is the sustainable use of blue resources, ocean resources. So here we're seeing different interests coming into play. We're seeing the private sector that has many a times a profit motive, so is more exploitative. We have the government that wants to find a balance to diversify its economy, give the incentives for the private sector to come in. But then we also know that the ocean, the resources, are a common heritage of mankind, right? So in all of this, there's a very fine line. And I think here the importance of governance institutions, institutional mechanisms come in play, especially when we're talking of the tragedy of the commons and all of that. So Nick, how do you see the governance element coming into the blue economy, and also how can the Commonwealth really pioneer and be a flag bearer for governance initiatives surrounding the blue economy?
Yeah, thank you very much, JP. And yeah, the Commonwealth, I mean, we have 47 of our 54 states have a coastline. We've got 36% of the coastal ocean under national jurisdiction globally is within the Commonwealth. So we are a blue Commonwealth. But the small island developing states, you know, have a particular significance because they have more ocean than land, significantly so. So you know, their economy is predominantly a blue economy. That's sort of 20 times on average more ocean than land, but actually, you know, for some of them, like Kiribati, 4,000 times more ocean than land. Seychelles and Maldives, 3,000 times more ocean than land. That's a huge amount of resource. And you referred to the value of the blue economy being 1.5 trillion a year, and it's set to double by 2030. But that's just the flows. When we look at the asset values, that's about 24 trillion. And so what governments are starting to realize and we need to move towards is that developing a sustainable blue economy is not developing a sector, it's developing a process, a transitional process to move from business as usual to something that is going to build these assets and have accruing assets into the future that are going to continue to provide for those island communities. Those business models that generate revenues now while also building ocean wealth for the future are critical. To do that, governments need a holistic approach, a whole-of-government approach to managing the ocean. Do you have a sustainable blue economy strategy? Does it align with your national ocean policy? Do you have a national coordination mechanism for that? Do you have a marine spatial plan to balance activities on the ocean? All these sort of questions are critical to how governments can manage a blue economy. And so the Commonwealth Blue Charter was a commitment by all Commonwealth governments in 2018 to work on a range of ocean issues, all which relate to this blue economy. And actually, Prime Minister Brown, together with the President of Kenya, are co-champions of a sustainable blue economy action group under the Commonwealth Blue Charter, where countries are coming together to talk about these issues, share best practices, and work together on addressing the shared challenges. And this is really important as well, because the ocean is a shared resource. We say shared ocean, shared values equals shared action in the Commonwealth.
Perfect, thanks, Nick. And I think I'd like to open a bit the discussion and start, right, concluding and converging everything. And if we had to take the first word from the theme of CHOGM, it's about delivery. So after hearing these different viewpoints, What is your opinion that needs to be done to start delivering the way forward to actually reach a sustainable blue but also green economy for SIDS? And maybe we can start from the far end and start moving and
That
closing.
Conveniently starts with me. I think, look, I think the issue is that we need to find, and I'm going to speak just to the issue of private sector development and economic growth that's fueled by that development. And I think we need to begin to identify businesses that aren't simply insulated from the challenges of SIDS, which are tourism, financial services, things like that. We need to identify lines of business that are particularly profitable because they're in SIDS. And that is the promise of the blue economy. I think there is this question about the use of technology. I mean, technology permits you to be highly productive in, frankly, an isolated position. But the promise of the blue economy is that you can do something that no one else can do, that islands are in a place to deliver on something that a land-based economy can't do. And to do that, frankly, I think we need to better monetize public good. I think the only way that that is really going to commercially work out is by having a better, carbon credit system. And if you have a better carbon credit system, then things like adaptation, mangrove swamps, recalcification, carbon capture, all of these begin to make commercial sense. But I think that's I would say that's the critical first step.
Thanks. So it's all about letting the markets work.
I think it's getting the market to be efficient, because at the moment the market is inefficient because it excludes the public good value.
Perfect. Thanks. Nick?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really important point, and the value of these nature-based solutions. But they go more beyond than just providing carbon credits for sequestration of carbon. That's a very important part of what a sustainable blue economy can provide. But actually, both governments and finance and private sector need to really look at what the ocean risks are. Because as Prime Minister Brown sort of shared, these ocean risks are affecting all of us. And ocean change is climate change, and ocean action is climate action. So addressing them is critical. I mean, if we look at the amount paid out by insurers over the past 10 years for coastal damage, it was $300 billion. That is a phenomenal amount. And yet, mangrove forests can produce a value of £80 billion per year in avoided losses globally. So you already see per year, that's like, why are we not conserving these things more? Plus they protect 18 million people. Coral reefs can provide another 4 billion offset there. So these resources are providing more than just carbon sequestration potential, which is why we've got to recognize them as assets in an ocean accounting framework and start to really look at their value over the long term on the country's balance books. It's really important. I mean, if we look at, so the good news is the financial sector, the insurance sector are really starting to look at this. So if we look at the Mesoamerican reef, which goes sort of along the coast of Belize, which is a Commonwealth country, but also Honduras, Mexico, Guatemala. It's the second largest barrier reef in the world. It has a sort of a service value, if you like, to the economy of about $4.5 billion a year. And yet, it gets destroyed by hurricane damage that reduces the tourism value and all these other issues. And so the Mesoamerican Reef Fund got together with the insurance sector to design a parametric reef insurance product that would pay out in the event of storm damage. And that has been in operation for over 4 test sites up to now. And for this hurricane season, which is going to start in the not too distant future, they're hoping to have 7 sites insured already for that. There's also products being designed to address things like illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing, which cost 20 billion a year in sort of lost income. So, you know, addressing ocean risk within a financial sense de-risks business, allows us to invest in a sustainable blue economy and to tackle these climate and ocean challenges.
Thanks. And I think you're compounding as well the element of making markets more efficient, right? John, your thoughts on the way forward for a sustainable blue and green economy?
Sure, thank you. I'd like to pick up on, Nick mentioned risks and assets, and technology can provide incredible capability rapidly, which can be harnessed, but not for the sake of technology. Technology is useful if you have a means in mind. Technology is the means to an end. So in the case of the blue economy, when we think about the risks that small island states face, there may be illegal fishing, there may be oil pollution happening in the area. And it turns out that space-based radar is very capable at detecting vessels in the ocean, very capable at detecting oil pollution on water. And so as we start to think about managing the blue economy, as we start to think about the risks that exist, technology can play a significant role in helping to manage and monitor those risks. We have been monitoring the ocean for over 30 years, MDA, with our technology, and we see evidence time and again of vessels that encroach on other territories, EEZs, and are fishing where they should not be fishing. And so maybe that's a risk that a small island state is concerned about, especially from an economic perspective. Technology can help with that. Technology can help with other things, and it becomes part of the foundational infrastructure as we build upon the blue economy.
Thanks, John. So it's about efficiency, it's about transformation. Mansoor, from your end?
I think where I think there's a lot of value in terms of the Commonwealth structure as well. I think there's a lot to learn from Africa that can be actually applied in small island nations as well. So one thing is around electrification itself, where we talked about that, whether it's sort of mini grids or solar home systems, to actually really make sure that there's renewable energy that exists. But the other big part is deforestation, right? And aspects of clean cooking. And I know for a fact that that is a huge challenge in small island nations. And I think what's happened in Africa, there's a real cross-learning that can actually be applied on that as well. I think maybe one thing that we're forgetting as well is that Africa is a very large island with a huge coastline and loads of communities, loads of countries being very, very dependent on the sea to be able to actually generate their income as well. And when we look at the link between energy and economy, it's very clear. We have customers in places like Senegal and in Togo for cold storage or fishing. To be able to actually be able to have export-grade products. That's just not possible unless you don't store it properly. Those are sort of economic activities that are suddenly possible. So that link between, okay, you can have the electricity, you can protect your forest, but if you don't investing in the right machinery, in the right appliances, creating the right stuff to be able to package, process, or do whatever you need to do inland, it's going to not generate the dollars inwards, typically speaking. And I think that's maybe the cross-learning, that maybe there should be an increased collaboration between the best practices that have been learned, and vice versa too, I'm sure.
Perfect. And I think if we had to sum everything up, the blue economy and the green economy is like any other economic sector, right? It's all about finding that ecosystem approach, making sure that you have the private sector on board, you have the right governance mechanisms, you have a government that has a vision, but then has also the ability to access and leverage financing to be able to apply and implement this vision. And I think if we keep in mind the potential that ocean resources have, not only from a flow, but also from a stock point of view, and the ability of using new financing mechanisms, blockchain-related, crypto-related, NFT tokenization of such assets, I think small states can actually start leveraging much more on these assets and start building a sustainable economic model around them. And I think with those thoughts, I'd like to thank everyone on the panel for joining us for this interesting discussion. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to take comments from the floor, but I'd like to thank you all for participation, and I hope you can enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Another round of applause to our guests. And Mr. Fabry, thank you for keeping it short. I would like to just mention a few announcements. Everyone who was part of today's session, there's a gala dinner at Serena Hotel. If you could make your way there, it kicks off at 7:30, so by 7, it would be great if you're all there. Tomorrow in this hall, we're going to have exciting sessions, everything from Invest in Rwanda, future cities, and sustainable urbanization and the like. So please try and be here as early as possible. Tomorrow is going to be a bit hectic. Lots of heads of government will be here. That said, wishing you a great evening at the Serena Hotel, and thank you all for being patient and staying for the last session. It's been an honor emceeing for you today. Thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you.